All right. So before we get into what light sources, what amount of light that we want on our work surfaces, let's try to understand some other basic concepts of lighting. Contrast and adaptation, or adaptation of our eye. Contrast is simply defined as the luminance of the object against its background. Okay? Luminance is again brightness of an object against its background. So if I'm taking this paper, which I forgot to send around, let's say I'm able to read these letters because the luminance on those letters is better than the background, and that's the contrast. So if I write it on a yellow pen on this yellow sheet, there is no contrast and I can't read it, right? Okay, that's the simplest way of understanding that. So if I have high contrast, it's easy to legibly see the outline of something. But there is a problem with contrast. Can anyone tell me what? Glare. Yes. Let me demonstrate that a little bit. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking at my skin here, and my background for this view is this floor, right? Now I'm able to clearly tell all the little variations in my skin pattern. The moment I go here and my background is more brighter than this, now the same skin looks darker. I'm dark to start with, but compared to here, the same skin looks darker here, right? That's the reason why we don't put in our office designs, we don't put a table facing the windows, because the
background is the bright more. You know what I mean? Like my skin's really white. If I put it against the dark background, it's fine. It's only
contrast.
I'm saying if you're looking at an object that's light already, then it's okay, isn't it? It's more if your background is really light, is a problem. Right.
The nice thing with the contrast is, see, this is high contrast, right? Mm-hmm. But the high contrast outline is very, very apparent. So if you want to project outline of some building feature, then you want to have a huge contrast. But if you want the detail to show, see, I can't really see what's going on here. So it's very important to understand what we're trying to illuminate and what we're trying to show. If we're trying to show the outline of something, then having huge contrast is not a problem, because the outline will clearly come through. But if we're trying to show detail, we can't see the detail if there is huge contrast. So what happens in our normal task surfaces, let's say a classroom, they're looking at a detail, fine print. So high contrast at the sheet level is good, but high contrast between the work surfaces may not be good, right? Close?
Yesterday when Ted turned the light on, the guy that was presenting, it made it harder to see him.
Right. What? Say that again?
We had the screen.
Yes.
And he stood in front of the screen. Ted turned the lights on that basically illuminated the screen, and it was harder to see him because same as what's happening
right.
here.
That's because we have low contrast. Mm-hmm. With low contrast, everything washes off. So we need to have the right amount of contrast. Does that make sense?
But actually, I think it was high contrast in his case because
right,
he was in front of a white screen.
Yeah, and he was standing in front of the light, so the light was coming down behind him and lighting the wall, the screen behind him. And so he
it's the same situation. Right. I understand.
Yeah, yep. More of a silhouette almost.
Right. Yes. So the silhouette, if that our design feature is a silhouette effect, then having contrast is not a problem. But if it's a fine detail, we shouldn't have contrast. But let me explain this. What we would normally do is, if we have a high contrast like this, and we still want detail to be read, then what is the easiest solution? To put more light on. Hence, we lose our energy conservation. So it is important to understand what we're trying to do. Okay?
You can also, there's another issue, and that is the amount of time it takes your
Yes.
pupil.
Okay, that's the next one. You're slightly ahead of me.
All right, sorry.
And this is the adaptation of our phenomenon that happens in our eye. So if it's a bright space, our eye adapts a lot quicker to bright lit spaces than a dark space. If you go into a bedroom in the middle of the night, it takes a little while before you get used to that low light. But let me give another example. Is it easier to, okay, between your, if you just take your sunglasses down and put your sunglasses out, I mean, put it back on in a bright sunlight, does your eye adapt like that? It does.
It does.
Yep.
Put my sunglasses on, but
Oh, take it
No,
off.
but
Taking them off is
no, take it off and put it on back in a bright light, in a bright environment. Your your eye adapts a lot quicker to the bright light than to a very dark environment.
Oh, I mean,
But
you're
if
able
you go-
to see better.
You're able to
Right.
see
Because
better.
if you go to in your room at night, it's really hard for your eye to adjust. But if you go,
It takes a longer time.
to light.
Right, it takes a
But if you
longer
go
time.
from very bright light to a lower light level, it takes a while to
Right,
adjust down.
right. And how does this impact our design? Let's say you have a conference room right in the middle of the core of a building. It's usually very dim lit, but it's got no openings, it has no bright sources. In that instance, if you go ahead and throw a huge, very bright luminaire, then the guy walking into it will have a problem acclimatizing to that dark conference room with a bright light source, as opposed to having a conference room like this, where you have a brighter environment. Does that make sense?
But you can also design thresholds between them. If you go from daylight and you're going into a dark planetarium, you design a corridor that
Right.
allows
Just like
you-
with natural ventilation.
right, allows your eyes to adjust.
Adjust. Yes. So it's important to think about those things as you move into your design. So, in the general rule of thumb, at least for task level, at least at the work surface for tasks that typically we're dealing with, we want to have the surface illumination higher than the background, so that there's legibility.